Chalice.
A chalice!
Welcome back, treasure seekers. Today we step into Chapter 9 of There's Treasure Inside. This chapter is bold, lush, and layered. It's titled The Golden Chalice and Confirmation Bias. Two seemingly unrelated ideas that, by the end of this chapter, collide in a way only Jon Collins could deliver. We begin with an image, a golden cup, ornate, ancient, on page 86. This isn't just a pretty artifact, it's a ritual vessel from the Chavin culture, deep in the Peruvian Andes, a civilization that predates the Incas, flourishing between 900 and 200 BCE. Collins tells us outright, this chalice is part of the treasure, and that's a bold statement in a book where everything is a riddle. The Chavin people used this kind of vessel not just for decoration, but for spiritual transformation. They were oracles, shamans, carvers of stone, and builders of a culture where every pathway aligned with the cosmos. But just a few paragraphs later, Collins jumps from Peru to a Christmas Eve church service from his childhood. Candlelight, hymns, the quiet magic of memory. At first it seems like whiplash, from ancient South American ritual to modern American worship. But look again. Both moments center on a shared cup, a sacred vessel, a chalice passed from hand to hand, be it filled with water, wine, or wonder. Chapter 9 is split, almost evenly. First, the spiritual legacy of Chavin de Huantar, high in the Peruvian Andes, a place I personally love. Then, Jon's memory of a quiet Christmas Eve service, a childhood moment steeped in reverence and tradition, and somehow, these two experiences mirror each other. Ritual, reflection, and something sacred passed hand to hand. I couldn't help but think of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. You know the scene, the Grail Knight guarding a room of glittering goblets, and Indy has to choose. One cup will bring healing, the wrong one, death. The true Grail? It wasn't flashy, it wasn't royal, it was simple, humble, hidden in plain sight, and choosing the wrong one, deadly.
That's the cup of a carpenter.
So when Collins shows us the image of the Chavin gold vessel, it's not just a symbol of treasure, it's a symbol of belief, engineered belief. The priests of Chavin weren't just serving drink from that cup, they were pouring stories, power, doctrine, and maybe, just maybe. Jon's asking us the same thing this chapter warns about. What chalice are you drinking from? And who convinced you it's gold?
The chalices.
Then Collins drops a term that every treasure hunter, puzzle solver, and researcher needs to tattoo on their brain. Confirmation bias. It's the tendency to see only what supports your theory and ignore everything that doesn't. When you're holding this book in your hands, flipping through pages, circling words, scanning maps, it's tempting to force meaning into every symbol. But the trap is real. Once your brain wants something to be a clue, you'll start seeing evidence for it everywhere. Before we tighten our headlamps and drop into the tunnels of Chavin de Huantar, let's do a quick pulse check on the theories exploding across Discord, Reddit, and the mysterious writing blog. Because Chapter 9 might be the single most speculated about section of There's Treasure Inside, second only to the Pokemon. Observation number 1. Chapters 9 and 13 are the only chapters that reprint the book's title as a header, There's Treasure Inside. Some sharp-eyed reader noticed 9th and 13th letters of the alphabet are M and I, which instantly sparked Michigan, Lion's Share box in the Great Lakes, supporting evidence? The treasure's called the Lion's Share, Detroit Lions maybe? Reach? Possibly, but you can see why the theory sticks. Pagination glitches, missing page 90 and Jordan card, mix-up, clue or printing error. Page 90 in Chapter 9 doesn't exist. Chapter 13 mislabels Michael Jordan's rookie card photo, claims page 112, lives on page 115. Treasure hunters know sometimes the mistake is the message. But as Jon reminds us, sometimes a typo is just a typo. The door handle's shadow, Nevada or Indiana. Next rabbit hole, page 94. A young woman reaches for a door handle. Her sleeve creates a long arrow rising from a notch in the shadow. Remove the notch, the remaining silhouette kind of echoes Nevada's border. Flip it horizontally, and you could argue Indiana. Nevada, Indiana, or is that just pareidolia? Up to you. Jon's subtitle. Confirmation bias might be waving a caution flag right here. Mysterious Writing Blog. Jon's own advice. Mysterious Writing pulled direct quotes where Jon defines confirmation bias and flat out warns us not to fall for our favorite shiny theory. He even inserts the line, "Look both ways before crossing." Translation, we are crossing a road. Jon says it is the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories. He also offers advice on how to avoid it. If we want to find the treasures we are seeking, we must remain rooted onto the firm ground of reality. Nothing good was ever gained by rushing to a false conclusion. Confirmation bias should be avoided at any cost. After stating this, Jon goes on to describe the Chavin culture and their mysterious, powerful ceremonies. How the high priest created experiences through natural means. But those persons involved believed these experiences were produced by the gods. Jon says the golden chalice, included in one of the treasure boxes, may have even been used during the experiences. It's interesting, those taking part in this supernatural experience are being falsely led, of which Jon refers to having suffered from confirmation bias. He writes how they were fooled. What but the gods themselves could have created such a place? It's almost as if here Jon is hinting to red herrings in the book. These false leads have us ignoring other options or clues being given in another way. We open chapter 9 with not one, but two razor-sharp quotes that slice right into the heart of what this chapter, and arguably this entire treasure hunt, is about. The least questioned assumptions are often the most questionable. Paul Broca. The explanation requiring the fewest assumptions is most likely to be correct. William of Ockham. Let's pause here. These two quotes form a philosophical double blade. On one side, Broca warns us, just because an idea feels normal or obvious doesn't mean it's right. And on the other, William of Ockham, the Franciscan friar and medieval genius, says, hey, the simpler answer? That's probably the one. This is the famous Occam's razor. Not a real blade, but a way of trimming down assumptions. And in treasure hunting, assumptions can lead you deep into the weeds. Occam lived during the 1300s in Surrey, England. A friar, a philosopher, a bit of a rebel. He questioned church doctrine and championed logical clarity in a world of wild superstition. His core idea was this: don't add extra complexity if you don't have to. Now that doesn't mean ignore mystery, but it means don't force it. So what does this mean for us? It means Jon is telling us right up front. Before you get tangled in riddles and over-engineered explanations, check your logic. This book is full of symbols, artwork, poems, and layered references. But if your theory needs 10 separate leaps to make it work, Occam says, probably not the right one. And here's where the trap gets sticky. We're looking for treasure. We want patterns. We want the Grail. But Jon pairs this chapter's golden chalice with confirmation bias, the tendency to shape all evidence around what we already believe. Chapter 9 doesn't tiptoe. It thrusts the Oxford Dictionary definition of confirmation bias in bold type, the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories. Then Jon Collins adds a warning almost poetic in its menace. Confirmation bias is an alluring spider entangling treasure seekers in its web. Notice what just happened. In previous chapters, we talked non-stop about threads and weaving. Chapter 9 escalates that same imagery into a spider in a web. Threads that once looked helpful now become traps. Collins doubles down, writing, if we want to find the treasures we seek, we must remain rooted to firm ground. Rooted, like a tree trunk anchoring silk lines. Suddenly, we have three motifs converging. Thread, web, roots, or rather rooted trees. For many readers, web plus spider immediately conjures Charlotte's Web. Charlotte A. Cavatica, an orb weaver just like the real barn spiders across North America. She spins a single phrase, some pig, and the entire barnyard bends its reality to believe Wilbur is special. That is confirmation bias in action. One spectacular piece of silk, and suddenly every bystander sees what they want to see. But in native cosmology, particularly Navajo and Hopi, the spider isn't merely persuasive. She is creator. Piter woman, Hopi, Naashye Asza, Navajo, weaves the very fabric of existence. She molds the first humans from clay. She teaches weaving, agriculture, survival. Her web is the blueprint of interconnected life. Hopi weavings include a deliberate spirit line, a tiny break at the border where Spider-Woman can slip inside, inspect, and bless the work. That break reminds the weaver, perfection is illusion. Humility invites insight. Collins drops the word venom nearby, a reminder that a spider is both giver and taker. Grandmother Spider's kindness flips to danger when children misbehave. Translation for us? Knowledge can nourish or poison, depending how we handle it. He tells us to stay rooted in many treasure lore circles that echoes blaze marks on trees, tangible ground truth versus wispy theories. So the chapter's chessboard now looks like this. Web equals alluring clue network, easy to misread. Root equals physical anchor, undeniable evidence. Weaver, you, the hunter, choosing which strands to keep. Next, we step fully into the tunnels of Chavin de Huantar, where priests once harnessed echo and shadow, weaving fear like silk. Stay grounded, keep your razor sharp, and remember, not every glittering line in the dark leads to treasure. Some lead straight into a spider's dinner. It hit me somewhere between my third Chavin documentary and my sixth AI hallucination thread on Twitter. Jon Collins is a funny guy. This entire chapter, framed around confirmation bias, is essentially him whispering, "Your treasure hunt theory? Yeah, that might be a full-blown hallucination." And here's the punchline. That's exactly what we call it when artificial intelligence invents details from thin air, an AI hallucination. Now, why does that matter? Because Jon's commentary on the limits of AI, saying it's ineffective or unrequited, ties directly into that web he warned us about. He's not just talking about search engines or algorithms. He's talking about us, the hunters, the dreamers, the code breakers who stare at a picture too long until we see Nevada in a door shadow. And that brings us to one of the most infamous parts of the book, page 90. It's missing, completely gone. Now, any treasure hunter worth their pickaxe knows a missing page is never just a printer error. So what could 90 mean? Here's a possibility I haven't been able to shake. Interstate 90. I-90 is one of the longest highways in America, stretching over 3,000 miles from Boston to Seattle. If we're meant to look both ways before crossing, as Collins wrote earlier, then maybe the lions. I've been pulling a single standout letter from each chapter for another puzzle I'm chasing. Chapter 9's letter, C, and that C is doing triple duty. C for Chalice, C for Chavin, C for confirmation bias. It's almost too perfect, unless of course it's another web. Or a strand pointing towards something real. Shared treasure lies somewhere along this massive east-west divide. Chapter 8 also gave me a C, C for Charles. Chapter 7 gave me an A for Amelia. Well, I guess that gives me AC as things begin to heat up in here. In page 91, we have talk of meeting of two rives. This is an important part of the temple, but could also point our way. Dating back as far as 1200 BC, Chavin de Huantar was the heart of the Chavin culture, one of Latin America's oldest known civilizations. It predated the Inca by nearly 2 millennia, but even today it still echoes. It wasn't just a city, it was a religious center, a ceremonial complex, and, according to some Spanish conquerors, a place of pilgrimage. Pilgrims would travel for weeks through mountainous passes to arrive here and receive visions or instructions. At the site's core is a structure known as the Castillo, a massive three-tiered stone temple made of rough, uncut blocks. It sits buried in part due to catastrophic landslides in 1945, which sealed off portions of the complex, as if the mountain wanted its secrets back. But what still survives is eerie. Beneath the temple, A maze of tunnels, chambers, and shafts cross like a sacred circuit board. Inside, archaeologists have found evidence of mirrors, conch shells, resonating stone ducts, designed not just for function, but for effect. Imagine it. You're deep underground, torchlight flickering on damp stone. From somewhere ahead, the distant roar of a shell trumpet. You can't tell if it's one priest or 20. A shaft of light flashes off a polished mirror, illuminating a stone god's face for a breath, then vanishing. These weren't accidents. These were ritual technologies, built to inspire awe, command fear, and control narrative. The people who entered this place believed they were witnessing something otherworldly, because the environment was designed to feel that way. Now let's take a second to highlight some of the most potent words I found in this chapter. Words that glimmered like veins of silver in the stone. Flattened area. Light illuminating. Reflect. Again and again. Collins says to write that one down, so we will. Tunnels with no windows, mirrors on the walls. What do you hear in those phrases? For me, it's not just Chavin anymore. It's every ancient site that used architecture and light to disorient, dazzle, or deceive. It's a treasure chamber where a beam of light bounces from mirror to mirror until it lands on the prize. Or it's a hallway of reflections that tricks you into thinking you're looking at truth when it's just the 100th version of yourself staring back. Our chalice might have held sacred wine. It might have held blessed water, or it might have held something much older, something that opened the mind. Because in Chavin de Wantar, before you entered the temple labyrinth, you drank from the vessel, a golden cup that, perhaps, wasn't just ceremonial, but psychedelic. The pilgrims who came to Chavin didn't just wander over from the next village. They traveled hundreds of miles crossing jagged ridges, Andean plateaus, and deep jungle to present offerings, to give gifts, and to surrender willingly into a temple of sound and shadow. The underground structure at Chavin was no simple passageway. It was a maze, a deliberate disorientation of reality. Lightless halls, hidden chambers, carved stone guardians, reflected sounds from distant conch shells. One theory says the priests orchestrated hallucinatory rituals where mirrors, water, flame, and music blurred the veil between worlds. It was sacred theater, and the cup, that golden chalice, might have been the key to unlock it all. Then suddenly we're back home. Collins shifts us out of Peru and into the soft glow of a small 200-person congregation on Christmas Eve. It's a candlelight vigil. It's his mother's favorite time of year. And whether or not you grew up religious, I think you might agree. There's a magic to this. A community gathered in quiet reverence. A single flame passed from person to person, the way it lights the faces around you. The glow, the hush, the feeling of something deeper rising in the chest. But my favorite moment, the one that stuck with me, is when Collins casually drops a hint. Here comes Peter Cottontail. Just a children's song, or a breadcrumb down a deeper trail? Because the rabbit, or hare, shows up all over mythology. It's a lunar symbol, a fertility symbol, a trickster. In Alice in Wonderland, the white rabbit doesn't just hop around, he leads Alice down the hole. That got me chasing rabbits online, metaphorically of course, and I came across a photo on Montana Fish and Wildlife's Instagram account. They call it the cottontail double stack. Two rabbits, one above the other, hidden in the sandstone. A moment so rare it only happens once every 10,000 years. But here's the part that made me freeze mid-scroll. The photographer described the region as a winding maze of corridors created by sandstone formations, a natural labyrinth, rife for rabbits to scurry through. Remind you of anything? So let's tie it back in. The chalice holding sacred, maybe even psychedelic, liquid, the labyrinth carved in stone and shadow, the rabbit who guides us down, the vigil full of light and flame. Collins has scattered his metaphors across cultures and centuries, but the structure, it's still circular. We're moving again and again, around the edge of something sacred. Let's lock in a few recurring symbols in this part of Chapter 9. Circle, light, and fire reflection labyrinth/maze. Peter Cottontail / The Rabbit Hole Sound and Shadow Illumination. The Missing Page 90. This part of the book is where the spiritual and the surreal start dancing together. Maybe the chalice isn't the only thing that holds something sacred. Maybe the journey itself, the winding corridors of metaphor and misdirection, is the experience. And the real key might just be the rabbit. So go ahead, follow Peter down the trail, but bring your candle and keep an eye out for the glint of gold in the dark. See how far to go. Use Will's straight edge, as the turning square or an arc may align at a proper point. Below is a step-by-step mapping exercise you can replicate on paper or in a GIS tool. It respects the poem's vocabulary, folds in Amelia's record flight, and produces a single proper point you can test against other clues. Will's straight edge. Draw a baseline anchor pair chosen. Mexico City, Amelia's departure. Newark, New Jersey, her record arrival city. How to plot quickly. Open Google Earth, QGIS, or a printed North America map with latitude-longitude grid. Plot both cities. Choose great circle distance if the software offers it. If not, use a ruler as a straight edge and accept a flat map approximation. Mark midpoint and bearing for later reference. The great circle distance approximately 2,500 miles, and initial bearing approximately 27 degrees east of true north. Turning square, pivot a perfect right angle anywhere along that edge. What the poem gives us, a square implies 90 degrees. Turning means we can rotate that 90-degree frame around our baseline. Construction method. Place a clear plastic drafting square on your baseline. Slide it to a spot that feels textually meaningful. Option A, the exact midpoint, visual balance. Option B, the latitude and longitude of Amelia's maximum ground speed, wildcard if we can derive it. Rotate the square until one leg faces true north, using your map's meridian, or aligns with a secondary clue you trust, e.g. 151 degrees if you're cross-referencing the Hopi angle. Mark the corner point created by the rotated square. That becomes candidate point number 1. If you want a 3D interpretation, think of a woodturner chucking a square blank on a lathe. The blank turns into a circle, which dovetails with the next instruction, arc, or an arc may align. Swing a radius instead of, or in addition to, a square quick way to honor the poem. Use the straight edge distance, 2,500 miles, as a radius. With Mexico City as center, draw a huge arc, a circle segment, with that radius. Do the same from Newark. Where those two arcs intersect the turning square's 90-degree leg, you get candidate point number 2, and possibly number 3 on the opposite side of the continent. This is classic triangulation. 2 radii plus a right angle baseline. Bird's eye view. Verify from altitude why it matters. Amelia's bird's eye view language in chapters 7 through 9 implies we should step back and see the pattern. When you zoom out, do your candidate points land on a well-known geologic flattened area, a labyrinth-like canyon system, a place that ties back to illumination, mirror, or rabbit symbolism? Reality check. Occam's razor sweep. Did you reach the point with only the poem's instructions plus one text-confirmed flight path? Does the location echo any prior Hopi, Cottontail, Mirror, or 151-degree references? Are you stretching extra assumptions, dates, numerology, personal hunches, to force the spot to feel right? If it passes the razor, keep it on your A-list. If not, label it a maybe and keep cutting assumptions. So, what did we really learn from Chapter 9? We chased gold, crossed cultures, entered tunnels, and lit candles under cathedral ceilings. We walked with the Chavine through stone corridors, drank in ceremonial illusions, and stood beside young Jon at his church on Christmas Eve, full of wonder, expectation, and maybe a little too much energy. But beneath the chalice and candlelight, Jon leaves us with a warning. Confirmation bias is seductive. It's the golden lie that tells us we're right, even when we're not. This chapter doesn't just hand us a clue, it hands us a mirror. It says, treasure is waiting. but only if you can see clearly. Look both ways before crossing. Don't let your favorite theory become your blindfold. And yet, even with all those warnings, we still noticed the chalice. We still saw the shadow on the door. We still wondered if page 90 is missing. For a reason. Maybe it's a red herring. Maybe it's a trap. Or maybe, just maybe, the treasure is hidden at the edge of reason. Next up is Chapter 10. You won't want to miss what's coming next. This has been your Chapter 9 debrief for There's Treasure Inside. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and don't drink from the wrong chalice.
This is called a chalice.
And no chalice.